Hey fam, welcome to the Free Trail Podcast and our new presenting sponsor. We're so happy to now be working with The Feed. Thefeed.com/free trail is where you need to go. It is the one-stop shop for all your training and racing nutrition needs. They have over 200 of the world's best nutrition brands stocked in one website. It's a fantastic resource. We've been big customers for a long time. We're really proud to work with them. Some of my favorite products that you can find at thefeed.com/free trail. Gnarly Nutrition Whey Protein Powder. I like the chocolate flavor. I have some of this after every one of my workouts and long runs. For in-run nutrition, Orange Drank. You'll see my big dumb face on it. Also from Gnarly Nutrition, enhanced sodium concentration here in the world's best fueling drink mix. Finally, HVMN, Ketone IQ. I have 2 of these ketone shots basically every single day, once before I go running and once in the middle of the afternoon when I need a little extra energy. Go to thefeed.com/free trail and you're going to get an $80 credit, free money to spend at thefeed.com. It'll be $20 right away and then $20 every 90 days thereafter. You'll also get a sweet Trail Running Will Save the World water bottle. Again, that's thefeed.com/free trail. You'll get $80 credit to spend on your favorite nutrition products. And if you are international, they do ship internationally as well. So you can take care or at least take advantage of that great offering from The Feed. Big thanks to The Feed for supporting and thank you for watching the podcast. Katie Schide, welcome back to the show. 2024 UTMB champion. How are you?
I'm good. Yeah. Thanks. And thanks for excusing me from getting to the studio after the race. It was a lot of traversing of streets. So this is a little bit easier.
Yeah, much easier for you. And I apologize because I was cringing to myself. I was like, I can't send Katie Schide a direct text message this morning of all mornings to request an interview. But I was like, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't try. But here we are doing it digitally, and I appreciate your presence. We were just chatting before we pressed record that you're still in the Chamonix Valley. You're still hopefully basking in the glory of your accomplishment and relaxing. What have the last 5 or 6 days been like?
They've been kind of a blur of some post-race, like media stuff, and then very quickly everyone leaves. So we were kind of on our own trying to get all our stuff cleaned and packed and decided it was even just too overwhelming. So we keep extending our stay here, but we are going to head home in a day or two.
I remember when we did this after you won in 2022, you saying something about how returning back to your guys' home village in the Mercantour is a little bit of a culture shock experience after UTMB week to go back to quiet home life. Are you looking forward to that again?
Yeah, I would say the shock is more in the other direction. Coming here is the shock. But it's really, I actually only found it overwhelming the 1 or 2 days we went into town before the race, and otherwise it was fine. I'm really looking forward to getting back for a little bit and relaxing and being in the quiet again.
A well-deserved rest. And I want to talk to you about how you manage UTMB race week, because I'm sure that is more complicated than it appears. But let's start last time we saw each other at Western States. What I would love to know is, as you were constructing your racing season for 2024, was the Western States UTMB double and winning both of them the ultimate goal for the season?
We're required to register for UTMB in January. I asked if I could wait to register and they said no. And so in January, I decided immediately after Western States last year that Western States would be my goal again for 2024. So that was the goal. But then when I started thinking about what I wanted to do later in the season, UTMB was the thing that I could, you kind of just feel sticks in your head the most. Mm. And those are the things I try to follow, because then I know it's because I have the most motivation for it. So it was in my head, and so I had to register in January, bought the runner's insurance, and kind of just put it on the back burner as a possibility, but didn't want to get too caught up in it. I was honestly just too worried that I would do it even if I shouldn't. So I wanted to tell myself I really didn't need to do it. was easier to add it on than to take it away. And yeah, after Western States, that's when I ultimately caved, but it was never the main goal. The goal for the year was Western States.
So what was the moment though that you made the determination, okay, I'm ready for UTMB this year? Was there a day after Western States where you were out for a training run and you felt physically, emotionally, mentally prepared for the lap around Mont Blanc again?
Honestly, even just like a little bit before Western States, I was starting to be like, there was starting to build some UTMB hype already, like in media stuff. And I saw the girls that were going to be there. And you see the list in January, but you have no idea who's going to actually be training for it in June, July. So I saw like the more finalized list and was like, I just feel like I can't not be there because it's just too good. And we don't have many opportunities, especially in the women's field, to really have such a tight race. And I just felt like I really just can't not do it. Like I have to be there for like women's ultra running at this time. Like I want to be part of it, even if something goes poorly and I don't feel my best or do my best or even stop, like I just want to be at the start line with everyone. So even just before Western States, I was starting to think like, oh, this might be a good idea. Like this might be an idea, but I wanted to be patient and make sure at first it wasn't injured following the race or having any problems. And once I saw like 2 weeks after the race, like, okay, my body is intact. That's when I felt more like sure about it.
Yeah. And what a historic field it was. So after Western States, tell us a little bit about the recovery and then the switch in specificity. You posted something about how it was a much more compressed timetable than typical UTMB preparation. I'm sure the audience would love to hear you talk about just managing that double, especially two races that are so different in terms of terrain.
Yeah. It was more just about taking the fitness from Western States and then just trying to get back into the rhythm of being in the mountains again and back to my normal running style, I guess. I think if we think about someone doing the two races, I think it really played to my favor to have UTMB as the second race because I can more naturally train for UTMB and it's more comfortable to me than Western States. So after just a few weeks of like being back in the mountains, I felt a lot better again. And like, it felt like a more natural movement to like be hiking and running downhill and with backpack and in the humidity. So yeah, this is not a lot of time, but I felt like I optimized it the best I could. And
it was a return to your roots.
I tried not to like get too stressed that I didn't have as much time because I've trained for the race so many times that I feel like it's still, you don't ever lose everything.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I thought was fascinating that you posted about was that in the last 2 years and focusing on Western States, obviously you've developed leg speed in a way that maybe you haven't earlier in your career, and that you felt more confident on the UTMB course in places where you actually have to run fast. In other words, like maybe a potential weakness in your first 3 runnings at UTMB became a strength. Expand on that a little bit because I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I'm not sure to call it leg speed because I was training with like a track club in Nice a few years ago. So I had like, if I needed to run for a short period of time, I definitely had like speed. And I also used to do like more sky running races. So that was never the issue. It was more like running on flat things for long periods of time. I always felt like it was a big weakness of mine. Like I always felt like I had to put more effort into staying with people in those parts of races. And that was my hesitation going into Western States the first time. I really didn't know like if it was going to work. Like I had no idea where I was going to be in that first Western States. And it gave me so much confidence to run like a time that was way faster than I expected. It was kind of like, hey, you're not as bad at this as you think you are. And that just gave me a lot of confidence. And then I think I carried that into this year and was able to train. I mean, I trained on that kind of terrain for basically 2 years. So for sure. When I get to those flatter parts of UTMB, I don't feel like I'm working as hard, either mentally or physically.
The thing that I think is interesting is that, as I was coming up, UTMB was viewed as an ultimate mountain race. But one of the things we were talking about all week was that, especially at CCC, but I think also at UTMB now, it favors the mountain athlete that also has leg speed. In other words, it's not diagonal défus. It's not even like hard rock. Like, you have to be able to run long stretches at UTMB and have developed leg speed. So just an interesting thing for our audience to think about. Talk about going quiet on the internet a little bit too, because it felt like there was an intentional focus, and I don't know, maybe even what it felt to me was a consolidation of energy and effort in the critical weeks between Western States and UTMB. And you posted about how you had taken a step back. Expand on that little digital quiet period.
Yeah, I think it was basically an energy conservation period. Partly because I just didn't have anyone taking photos of me, so I didn't have any content to share. And the other thing was, I was just really happy to be back and like in my place and feeling really comfortable, like just in my life. And I just didn't feel like I had I just wanted to kind of keep it for me. Like, I didn't feel like I needed to overdo anything. And I had shared quite a bit before Western States. So it almost felt like I was kind of saving UTMB, like, for me, because that's what it felt like. Like, Western States, it was really like, I want to go there. I want to like really focus on this. I want to perform. And then adding UTMB was totally my decision. Like, that nobody asked me to do that. Like, that was 100% me putting myself into it. And so I think that was sort of the approach to the race, was like, this is just like my thing. Like, this is just like Katie's thing, not like Katie, the professional athlete. So in terms of, I know a lot of people, there's been a lot of chatter about my Strava darkness. That was mostly because where we live at home, we live in a really private area and nobody visits that area. So I don't really mind so much sharing that. But when we were in the Chamonix Valley, I just didn't really want to share my location. There's a lot of people here and there's two of us, and it just felt nice to like kind of feel like we had our own space.
Okay. So then coming back to race week management, it felt also that like you had an intentional strategy as to how to preserve that critical energy so that you could use it only on the race course. And I think it's getting more and more difficult, especially for athletes like yourself, to protect that energy during UTMB race week. What strategies do you and Germo implement to ensure that you are protecting the energy?
The first thing is that we don't stay in Chamonix. We stay outside of town. And then the other thing is just to being really clear with your sponsors, if those are the people who are taking your energy or like asking you to do things, just we're really clear, like a month or two in advance, so that we can agree to things in advance. And then, if you can set that up and everyone has clear expectations of each other before the day before, then there's no like hard feelings. It's clear on all sides. And I think it's just being clear from the beginning, and also advocating for yourself and like just remembering you're there for the race. That's the most important thing. And, sponsors ultimately understand that their job is to try to get the most out of you, just like your job is to get the most out of yourself. So you have to respect when they ask you things, because that's their job too. But just being clear, like, hey, I'm here to race. And they do understand in the end. You just have to sometimes, you have to sometimes not feel like you have to please everyone.
Yeah. Do you get like overwhelming amounts of inbound? Just personally curious, like, do you have somebody who filters out some of those requests for you so that you know what to do and what not to do? Or is it basically like you have the schedule a month ahead of time and anything outside of that is an immediate no?
Yeah, we schedule everything ahead of time. And I think because Jarmo and I are two people, we're good at like confirming with each other, like, hey, do you think this is a good idea or a bad idea? And then we can kind of like check each other, like, hey, no, that's not a good idea. And you're like, oh yeah, you're right. Or in both directions, we check each other. But yeah, I think it's just, if you're clear ahead of time, then you don't get last minute requests. And when you do, you just say, sorry, I already set my schedule.
Yeah. Okay. So coming to strategy, psychology, process before the race, in your post-race interview, you said that your goal was to run under 22 hours, if not to break the course record. And of course, one of the things that comes up in conversation about you all the time is just like the professional approach that you take, the meticulous, detail-oriented preparation that you do, not only in your training, but in all the other details that lead to these types of performances. Working backwards from that sub 22-hour goal, can you add any detail to like what that process looks like? Are you deep in the spreadsheets to try and visualize various ways in which you might approach the race strategically?
That was purely because I just took the percentage of the men's and women's course records at Western States, and I think it's 9.5%, and saw that that difference at UTMB was much greater than 9.5%, and saw that if it was this, like, I think it's 9.5. Now I feel bad. I should double check. But if it was the same percent difference at Western States, at UTMB, it would be like 2150. And so I thought, okay, maybe it's not me, but some women should be able to hit this number if we're using the men's time as the standard. Like, so that's what got me fired up. I was like, just feeling a lot of energy towards like the women's side of the sport this year. And yeah, I just felt like someone can do it. And we have almost all of the best on the start line. So like, this is the time to try to do it. And so, yeah, again, like I came here as like, I don't want to say bonus race because it sounds like I didn't care about it. I did deeply care about it, but it was like an extra special like add-on to my season that was already went really well for me. So I was like, well, I might as well just go for it. Like, I've got nothing to lose here. And maybe in going for it, someone else will go for it and they'll get it. Like, but somebody can get it, I'm sure. So yeah, that's where the sub 22 came from. And then of course I knew that if I didn't quite make that, it could maybe be under the previous time anyway.
Yeah. And go for it. You did. Your racing strategy was so fearless. In the little interview we did with Vincent after the race, he talked about how you caught up to him on the Col de Bonhomme. I'd love to hear you just talk about the psychology of this. I mean, maybe it is just a feeling of ultimate freedom. This is a bonus race, swing for the fences. If it doesn't work out, nothing to lose type attitude. But also it strikes me that there might be some self-doubt or just feeling of second guessing your strategy, whether it's intelligent or not. So as somebody who is front running the entire way, how do you balance that, taking the big risks versus doing the things that others might interpret as the conservative, intelligent, strategic race approach?
Yeah, for the first time, I'd actually written down some of my splits from 2022. And just, I remembered the ones from Saint-Gervais and Lake Contamine and Col de la Seine, just to have a sense of how I compared to myself from 2022. So even though there was a lot of comments on me coming in with the first guys in the first aid stations, they were actually running pretty slow compared to how fast they normally run. And I think if I hadn't written down my times from 2 years ago, I would have freaked out and like, okay, maybe this is too fast. But I knew I was still on those times from 2 years ago when I started too fast. But now I feel like my fitness is actually at that level. Uh-huh. So I was 100% fine. I was like, okay, I'm doing what I wanted to do. They're looking at each other, trying to figure out who's going to do their sprint first. I let them like play their game and I just stay on my plan. So yeah, but I do, like, of course, I'm sometimes laughing during the race, knowing people are like commenting like, oh, she's starting way too fast. But I still think this like way too fast thing, they'll say that if you fail, they'll say you started too fast. But if it works, they say it was a smart race. So at some point you have to decide what you want to do for you and what you're going to have the fewest regrets about. And I ran the way I wanted to. And if somebody thinks it's too fast, then good for them. But that's, I was making my own decisions in the moment.
Yeah, well, it's so clear. And the other word that comes to mind when watching you race is composure, I feel like. And oftentimes with people who are front running, there's sort of a sense of urgency that you can feel, or like a strain in body language almost. But you seemed like calm and under control all day. Is that like a correct interpretation, or is there anything that you do to cultivate that composure?
Yeah, I do think I over the years I've learned how to like retain my energy and just focus on just like maintaining my little space and not getting too caught up in what else is going on. And ultimately, like being calm is faster. If you can like not have this stress with you, you can run faster because you're more relaxed and just more fluid. And it's taken me a while to learn that, but I think it's something that I try to find in each race, is just like a sense of calm, regardless of how the race is going.
Did you ever feel under duress at all? Was there ever a moment where you were really suffering? Because from the outside, just observing, it felt like the quintessential dream, perfect 100-mile performance.
The last from Valersine to the end was really, really hard. I was suffering a lot. You can ask the cameraman. It was not pretty. But like there's always hard points in a race. And if it comes, for it to come on, like I say, only in the last 2.5 hours, that's pretty good for me. So I can take that. It's a lot easier to manage when the finish line is like within touching distance than when it's in the middle of the race. So, it was super hard in the last 2.5 hours, but I also knew I was almost there. So,
yeah. So for our audience, this was your 4th lap around Mont Blanc at UTMB. You were 6th in 2019, 8th in 2021, respectively. You were 5 hours faster this year than those 2 years. Of course, when you won the race,
5 hours and 20 minutes faster. Yeah. And just one interesting point is like my times from my first 2 runnings of UTMB would not put me in the top 10 anymore. So really? For me, that's just so cool that we're at the point where like what used to put someone 6th in the race, you're not even in the top 10 anymore.
Right. It's funny. Danny Moreno said the same thing about OCC. She was 6th this year, and the year that she finished 3rd, that time wouldn't have put her in the top 10 this year. And that was only 2 or 3 years ago also. So it is amazing to see how quickly things are advancing on the competitive end. But coming back to what I was saying, I mean, you were a full hour faster than the last time you ran it, even a little bit more, I think. And one of the things we were talking about coming into the race is, even though you had those 3 finishes that included a win, it didn't feel like you had like the perfect Katie Schide race yet. Did this feel like you finally got it right? Or now with a week of perspective, do you in your post-mortem think of places where you can improve?
I mean, if we had perfect races, we wouldn't keep doing this sport, right? So for sure, there's a million things I want to improve. And that's like the first thing I'm thinking about when I'm crossing the line. And where to find those 9 minutes. I can see a lot of places to find those 9 minutes. So for sure, there's plenty of things to work on. There's always things to improve. And I think everyone would agree, like there's no perfect race.
Yeah. Or when it happens like once in your entire life. And then, you retire maybe after that. So keep chasing
if that happens, I'm done. Then what else is like, what would you do in training if you had a perfect race? You have nothing to improve.
Yeah, right. I already figured this out. I'm already too good at this. Yeah. What else is there left to prove? So one of the stories about this year's UTMB obviously was the massive attrition. And to me on the ground, obviously not being in the race, it did feel like hard conditions for the race, just hot and humid. But of course, you broke the women's course record. Vincent ran the 3rd fastest time ever. So it's sort of a strange dichotomy of like historically fast times while also tons of people really suffering and not making the finish line. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. Did it feel like a hard day, hard conditions?
Nothing, there was nothing that was outrageous. I actually thought the weather in general was pretty good. If you think about how much time we spend running at night, I was thinking about this. I actually had a long sleeve shirt on for 12 hours of the race. So that only leaves 10 other hours where I was wearing a t-shirt, and 3 of those hours were from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. So then, it was hot at the end, but in terms of percentage of the race, it's not that much. It's hard to say. It was definitely hot at the end, but I think probably the women behind me had it the worst. It probably affected them the most, because that climb at attrition is just like directly in the sun, super hot. And when I was there, it was very hot, and I'm sure they were suffering more in the Bovine and the Trial climb.
Yeah, it's just a very strange confluence of circumstances, I feel like, and something that is difficult to find the reasoning behind, but so cool. I've gotten to see you race all 3 times this year at Canyons, where you won, broke the course record, 6th overall, Western States, 1st, 13th overall, UTMB, 1st, 13th overall again, and all of which you have won in just like very impressive fashion in a very similar style to what you did at UTMB. Just having you meditate on the season, I mean, it's got to be, the best of your career so far. So if anything you want to say about life and training circumstances, mental disposition that has led to this incredible season you're experiencing.
I think for sure there's always, you have to first remember there's like a huge aspect of luck in all of these things. I can see that with just at home. I mean, Jarmo took just like a really dumb fall, just like jogging, and broke his ribs. And that affects so much of your whole season. So there's little things that can happen that are just purely luck. And I've had some pretty good luck the last few years. I haven't had to take any significant amount of time off of training. Even when it's the quote off season, like I can still run, I'm still training, just not in like the same amount of intensity. I think it's just consistency over. Now I'm at 6 years of doing ultra races and 8 years in Europe racing. So yeah, it's the like kind of boring answer. Like I've just been running for a while, and every year it gets a little better. And at some point I passed a threshold where more people were noticing, which is really cool. Like I'm happy to have the support and have people noticing, but I was happy doing it even when nobody noticed. And I think that's what's important, is like, it's all intrinsically motivated. Like I am not here because I had some big result and then felt like I needed to stay in the game. Like it's just every year it's like a little bit better. I hope it keeps going that way. It doesn't always keep going that way. I've been lucky to be able to stay on that trajectory, and I hope I can stay on it for a while. But it's also the understanding that I do have a lot of luck in knowing I can very quickly be on the other side of the game.
Yeah, well, what a beautiful sentiment that we can sort of close on, in being intrinsically motivated at doing it because you love it anyway. And I think you posted something about that too, just like that this is actually your job, this is your career, but you'd be doing it anyway, even if it weren't. So just for our listeners here, you become, I think, the 4th person to do the Western States UTMB double and win both. Nikki Kimball did it in 2007, Kilian Jornet in 2011, Courtney Dauwalter 2023. Amazing company. And now also you are among Chrissy Mail, Rory Bozio, Lizzie Hawker, and Courtney Dauwalter, plus Katie Schide as the only people to win it on the women's side multiple times. Of course, on the men's side, there's Kilian and Xavier, Francois, Marco Olmo, etc. But elite company. I hope you're super, super proud. Are you shutting it down for the season now, Katie?
Yeah. You'll probably see me crewing another race this year, but I won't be running any more races. Probably maybe an early season skimo race in December, but that would be it.
You're not getting to the cross country season here this fall? I know that's something you used to do.
Our cross country
in...
season is this spring.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, for sure. I love cross country. I'll be at a race or two this spring for sure.
Amazing. Well, Katie Schide, congratulations on another incredible victory. Thank you for the inspiration. I hope you enjoy a deep rest, a celebration, and a quiet return home.
Thank you. Thanks.